Hello, everyone, and welcome. While this session has been pre-recorded, please feel free to comment or ask questions in the live chat, which you will find in the GoToWebinar questions panel. Be assured that we are monitoring, and we'll either respond during this live session or we'll follow up with you personally shortly after. Now, while we give it another minute for other people who are still logging on to join, let me take this opportunity to ask you for your input. It would be really interesting to know what you'd like to hear about for future webinars. You know, what topics would you like us to delve into? What problems keep you up at night? Maybe it's something related to pre or post boarding. Maybe you want trends, transaction laundering. I mean, I'm kind of hitting on the obvious things, hoping that maybe you could write to us in the chat and say, hey, here's the less obvious thing, or the obvious ones. Let us know what you'd like to hear about, because that's then will help us create the content that'll be useful to you. So now for those who are still joining, I am going to do a really minor recap. While this session has been pre-recorded, please go ahead and use the GoToWebinar question panel to make comments and questions. We will be monitoring this closely and will respond live here, or we will follow up with you directly. Okay, but with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Officially, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this session about new card brand rules, the topic of the day for us all. My name is Annie, and I will be moderating today. Now, before we jump in, it's important to note that we do not work for Visa, MasterCard, or any of the other payment networks, and we do not speak for their brands or companies. The discussion today and presentation materials do not constitute legal or other professional advice. Now, housekeeping. Again, if you have any questions or comments, submit them in the GoToWebinar questions panel, or if you prefer a less public channel, just drop an email to marketing@g2llc.com. Again, that's marketing@g2llc.com. So I check it personally, so just consider it the Annie hotline. It's not like it's going to a giant group of people, so you can send private messages there. Next, in your GoToWebinar panel, in the handout section, you can download this presentation deck and some additional resources. So make sure to check that out before the session is over. Lastly, this session recording will be sent out to all registrants, and it will be posted within a week on our website. So again, we'll send those links in the email that'll come after this webinar. Okay. Moving on to introductions, which is really fun for me here. Of course, in prepping for this session, I've had one or two sessions with Chongi and Jamie to prepare, and it's been a real delight. So I'm here to introduce Chongor Chuba and Jamie Bello. Chongor is with PayOne, and it's a leading acquirer in Germany. And Jamie is a G2 analyst specializing in MCCs and KYC. Now, first, a little bit more about Chongor. So aside from being really a great guy and fun to work with, he is a fraud and investigation specialist at PayOne and actively involved in risk management, card scheme compliance, and anti-money laundering regulations. So he's been in the industry 10 years in the field. He lives and breathes this. In his spare time, in fact, he co-chairs the Merchant Risk Council's Global Fraud Committee, and he also volunteers with the EPSM, or European Association of Payment Service Providers for Merchants. In turn, he represents the EPSM organization at EUIPO Observatory, and for those who are unfamiliar with EUIPO, that's the European Union Intellectual Property Office. So he's really heavily involved in these organizations, and it's his day-to-day work. So we have a real expert here. And as the perfect complement, we have G2's own Jamie Bello, who brings a unique point of view to this discussion. Obviously, we'll be talking about MCC codes, and she's on the front lines every day. Jamie is a senior analyst with 6 years of experience in the payments industry specific to KYC and MCC research. KYC, of course, stands for Know Your Customer, and MCC is Merchant Category Codes, just in case a couple of you on the call didn't know. Her capability in KYC allows her to navigate complex compliance requirements and help organizations minimize risk. It's on that side. And then her knowledge and proficiency in MCCs lets her effectively classify merchants and categorize transactions, which gives you guys the insights that you need to optimize operations and streamline reporting. And as for me, I am Annie Beringer, the Director of Product Marketing at G2. And while my title has the word marketing in it, my role sits between product, sales, client services, and marketing. Essentially, my job is to connect with all of you here on this call. And what keeps me up at night is wondering what keeps you up at night. Because what I want to do is support G2 in supporting you. So I'm very interested in talking with any and all of you who would be willing to do so. If you're up for like a 10 or 15-minute chat, just so I could hear about your unique situation, your unique problems, please do reach out. Again, you can reach me at actually marketing@g2llc.com, and you can think of it like I said, Annie Hotline. I'd really love to talk with you. So before moving on, I'd like to extend a real heartfelt welcome and thank you to Changi and Jamie for being here. And with that, I will have us move on. And we're going to jump right into the discussion. Some of the changes in the rules that we'll be discussing today, and a lot of them, maybe even most, relate to MCCs. And with this many people on the call, it's likely that not everyone is an MCC expert. So we're opening with a brief overview. We'll cover, what are they, why are they important, in order to lay a foundation so that we're level set for the rest of the discussion. Then we'll move on to the second section, which will shed light on what does an MCC analyst actually do. We have one right here on the call. Then we'll get into highlights of rule changes and refinements that you might want to pay particular attention to and why you should pay attention. Now, notably, we will not cover every rule change and nuance of everything. You just don't have the time. This will be highlights, but important highlights. Again, we don't make the rules, and there are too many, for us to cover. But again, please let us know in the chat if you have specific questions or want to hear more on any particular topic or want us to deep dive further down on something. Okay. All right. So to kick off our overview of MCC basics, I'll hand it over to Jamie to start with a definition. So Jamie, you want to tell us about what MCCs are?
Yeah, of course, Annie. First off, I just want to say thank you. I'm really happy to be here and discussing MCCs with all of you today. So what are they? What are MCCs? MCCs are merchant category codes, and they're used to classify a merchant's business model by the goods or services that they provide. For example, a merchant could be classified as a restaurant, an online clothing store, or even a smoke shop, plus over 800 other options. So that's a quick description of what MCCs are. As to why they matter, I'm going to turn it over to Changi, who, as an acquirer, lives and breathes the importance of MCCs every day. Changi, you want to take it from here?
Thank you, Jamie, and also really happy to be here and to discuss all the changes and all the new trends out there. So as I fully agree with your remarks, and I like to emphasize that from an acquirer's perspective, the merchant category codes are very important and they play a crucial role when it comes to underwriting, onboarding policies, risk requirements, and also pricing. And from a card scheme perspective, for different MCCs, which might be classified as specialty or high risk, you have different fraud and chargeback thresholds and also different program identifications. The MCCs are also important for interchange fees and for the issuers to have a correct picture of a merchant's business type so that they can set rules on and they can better prevent, for example, fraud. Also, if you are participating in the MasterCard Merchant Monitoring Program, or short MMP, then the MCC is a mandatory field in the monitoring program. So the MMP can afford a level of assessment mitigation if you as an acquirer perform all the program and reporting requirements. As for why now, I believe that from our standpoint, from the acquirer standpoint, we have been always aware of the importance of the MCCs, and especially having focus on trying to allocate always the most appropriate MCC. And this is not a recent development, as we understood where the fraud tends occur, and the schemes are also acting based upon where fraud might hide. However, the increased attention on the MCCs is now primarily due to the enforcement efforts made by the payment networks. And we must say that over the past few years, there have been indeed changes to the rules concerning the MCCs. And as a direct consequence of these changes, now stricter enforcement measures are being observed. So I hope that gives some context around why MCCs are so important. So Annie, I go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you for that really great baseline. And really, Chungor, excellent on why they're so important. This is why we're so glad to have you here, because you have a really broad perspective. So now, after hearing his explanation of the importance, we're going to turn our focus to understanding the level of expertise and attention to detail that's required to really accurately assign MCC codes so that your whole entire portfolio is going to be clean and correct, or as correct as absolutely possible. And to help with that, I'll turn it back over to Jamie.
Thanks, Annie. So as I was thinking about how to prepare for this session, I thought of my own family's small business. My partner and I actually started a pop-up shop selling Hawaiian shave ice. That doesn't at all sound high risk, right? Not at all. In fact, our MCC code is 5814 for fast food restaurants, which falls in the low risk category. But let's say if we expanded or switched over to selling online packaged syrups, then the business model changes. For example, if we added alcohol to those packaged syrups, then the risk goes up and the code would change. And the code would change to 5921 packaged stores, beer, wine, and liquor, a high risk category. And there you have how my family's business turns into a great example of what I do on a daily basis. As to what I do at a high level, our team at G2 reviews each merchant's website to identify, verify, and also assign an MCC code, providing the MCC code name, the description, and a risk type. To look at the specifics of how we do this, imagine for a moment that you just signed up for G2's MCC check service, and I'm the analyst working on your account. The process from there breaks down into basically 3 steps. Step 1 is getting your merchant data into the G2 system. Typically, you would send G2 an Excel file that includes key fields like the merchant name, merchant URL, and address information. Since the fields that I receive vary slightly from client to client, I then transfer the data into a G2 template, which is a spreadsheet with specific columns like the one at the top of the slide. This screenshot is just a simplified version to highlight the most important columns, which I mentioned a moment ago. But an actual MCC check report would of course include more data. Step 2 is the research. I start at the top of the list and work my way down, drilling into each merchant's website, checking to see what goods and services that they may be providing to the consumer, and really identifying if the assigned MCC is the most appropriate. On the bottom of the slide, you see a few examples. All of them were actual merchants that were provided to G2 for an MCC check. The first one you see under the seemingly benign column came to us with a miscellaneous health medical code, but it turned out to be a very typical shoe repair store with no connections to health and or medical services, not even orthotics. So we assigned the obvious MCC code for 7251 for shoe repair. In the second column, you see the merchant provided an MCC 5331 for variety stores, which is a common low risk code, but this merchant was actually a liquor store falling under the higher risk MCC 5921. Then the third example is for a merchant that was listed 5977 for a cosmetic store, but they actually had a pharmacy, placing them in 5912, which is not only a higher risk category, but if not carefully monitored, could lead to potential violations. Now, all of these are examples related to step 2 of the overall process, which is to really do the research. Now, step 3 is the final and easiest step on my end, which is to share the information back to you so that you can reassign or further investigate according to your own internal guidelines and processes. So now when I log on each day, I really think of myself as an extension of your team. I work in the background using my experience and knowledge of the MCC codes to give your team that information that they need to assign the most accurate MCC.
So Jamie, this is really great. I'd like to jump in here to underscore your point about finding accurate MCCs. I'd like to bring everyone on the call to your attention to the column labeled seemingly benign. You'll see MCC 8099 in the first row, which is a miscellaneous category. And these miscellaneous categories are very important to understand. But before we get into the serious understanding, we have a little quiz. The great image over there on the right of this dog statue. Question, what code should the merchant that sells that dog statue along with other miscellaneous items, what should they be assigned? We'll come back to that at the end, but go ahead and put your guess in the chat for us. But now, Jamie, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Annie, for that lead in with the dog picture. It's really funny. For those of you who may be newer to the world of MCC codes, the ones ending with 2 or 3 nines like 8099 or 8999, those would indicate a miscellaneous bucket. It's really important to understand those miscellaneous codes because you likely have a lot of them in your portfolio. So merchants properly bucketed into miscellaneous categories can represent lost revenue, and they're also an easy place for fraud to hide, which can potentially mask significant risk for payment network violations and assessments. So as you look at MCCs in your portfolio, remember that the goal is really to assign the most accurate, most specific MCC possible. Challenges that you'll run into include that some MCCs are more specific than others, and a merchant can really fall under more than one category. The examples on this slide are pulled from G2 clients who provided us with a more general MCC. And after further investigating their business, we assigned a more specific code. So you can see in the first example of how plumbing and heating equipment could also fit in the 5099 code for durable goods. But note that the 5099 description also says not elsewhere classified. It turns out that the plumbing and the heating equipment indeed has a more specific code. So it'd be best to use 5074. And then the second example of the candy store shows a much similar situation and illustrates how common it is to use a more general miscellaneous code, even though there's a more accurate code available. And then the last example is really interesting because you'll see that there is no 99 in either of the code, but you can see that a Hyatt hotel can logically fall under the general 7011 code for lodging, but the code specific to Hyatt is naturally the correct code to use. So what's really important here is that the 7011 code does not include 99, nor does it have the word miscellaneous in the description. Yet it acts as that miscellaneous bucket for lodging providers. So when reviewing your merchant portfolio, you can't just scan for the 99 codes. It really takes someone looking closely, understanding those codes, and knowing what to look for, and then researching the merchant's offerings to determine the best MCC. So I really hope that helps. Now, Annie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, that was really great, Jamie. And before we move on, thanks all to all of you who put guesses into the chat, or for those of you who thought about this being pre-recorded, maybe you made a mental guess. As for me, I think the person selling this dog statue would land in, I'm going to guess 5331 for some kind of a variety store. But I'm curious about the two of you, Chongi and Jamie. What do you guys think? Maybe Chongi, you try.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. So I can see some old articles, maybe antique products or hidden treasures. So I would say with 5932 antique shops. However, it's hard to say based on the picture.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Changi, of antique shops or like second used hand goods or something. But yeah, like you, it's really hard to tell just by looking at this small picture, small little shot of this picture. If we enlarge this picture, there could be like alcohol in the background or cigarettes. This could be a cigar store with just a dog sculpture here. So it's really hard to tell.
And this is interesting to me because, you know, I come just from basically my knowledge of MCCs is very surface level. I just thought variety stores because I was looking at the high level list. You guys think of it from the perspective of, okay, wait a second, I actually don't have enough information here. Can't look at a picture. What's not here? Cigarettes, alcohol. Yeah, it really underscores how you really need to understand the codes, what to look for. Great.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, enough fun and games with our dog there, which is great. It's time to get into the heart of the matter here, into the meaty, serious stuff. So we will dive here into the card brand rules. We'll open with so this is at a high level, we're gonna first cover VIRP, then other recent changes that affect all regions, and then we'll wrap up this section with a few things related specifically to Europe. So Chongor, I'll turn it over to you to dive into VIRP.
Thanks, Annie. And yes, the hottest topic now is the Visa Integrity Risk Program, which is a completely new program. There's not just renaming the old one. The old program, the Global Brand Protection Program, has been completely replaced by this. And the Visa Integrity Risk Program is already effective 1st of May. It has been announced just in April, and a couple of weeks later it became effective. We must say that it is the same common goal that the payment networks and that the acquirers have, and I can quote that that is to protect the payment system from illegal and illicit activities. And for that, we all, so the payment scheme and the acquirers, all the stakeholders must have appropriate controls and oversight for all the processes. And this is being put in a framework with this Visa Integrity Risk Program. And there are some changes regarding the wordings, like we have seen this with MasterCard, that they said they are not high-risk merchants anymore. Those are called specialty merchants. The same now with Visa. So it's not called high brand risk anymore. It's high integrity risk. And also the registration program has been renamed. But those are the minor changes. The bigger changes, and we should then dive deeper into it, come with the new MCCs that have been added. So there is a lot more to discuss about.
Oh, that's great. That's a perfect transition into our next slide, which gives that overview. So I'll just let you're on a roll, keep going.
Thanks, Sammy. So there are 3 new MCCs which have been added to the Visa High Integrity Risk Program. And those are the MCCs for crypto merchants, the 6012, but also the 6051, which can be used for crypto merchants. And then we have the second one, the 6211, which is normally for security brokers and dealers, but in this case it applies only to high integrity risk financial trading platforms. And what's that? It's, for example, forex or binary options trading or contracts for differences. The last one is the 5968, which is normally the MCC for direct marketing continuity subscription merchant. And in this case, it only applies for subscription merchants with negative option. So in case a merchant, a non-face-to-face negative option billing merchant makes transactions. So not all subscription merchants need to be registered, only those with negative option in this case. But as I mentioned before, these are the 3 new MCCs. However, you shouldn't register all the merchants with these MCCs. It's also important to look at the business models and to evaluate if it's a high-risk business model as described or not. So you need to check that one.
Yeah, this is great that you highlighted these because these are the new big changes all in one place. And I remember, of course, our next slide is going to be about the tiers, and so this is a perfect lead into how do these MCCs that you just referred to, how do they fit into the new tiered model? So I'll let you run with that now on, and we can go ahead and change slide. Back to you.
Yes, so as an onion has different layers, so does the new Visa Integrity Risk Program have. And this is also something completely new. Previously, there weren't tiers allocated to the MCCs, and now this is the case. So the tier 1, in these merchants operate in businesses where illegal activity can occur without proper controls, and that this illegal activity can cause significant harm, as you can see, to health, safety, or well-being of individuals. And as we look at those, these MCCs were all also previously to be registered as a high risk. So they're, at first glance, they might be nothing new. However, there are specific requirements to every MCC, and these are also described in the user guide. I won't go into too much details, but I can say you that, for example, for the adult content MCC, the requirements are similar to what MasterCard has published a couple of months ago, or now years. And that's also the case for the other MCCs. Acquirers that currently are processing transactions with these MCCs don't need to get a separate approval. Now, if they had processed transactions in the 12 months preceding 6th of April this year, they may continue to do so, of course, in accordance with the VRP guide. And acquirers that do not process any of these MCCs will need to get approval, and it's very important that for each MCC a separate approval. Yes, so that's that was tier 1, and going forward to tier 2, we must say that here we see new MCCs, like for the crypto merchants, and you have the cyber lockers, which were already to be registered previously, and you have the games of skill. For the games of skill, it's important to bear in mind that there are 3 criteria to follow. One is that there has to be a fee to enter the game, and then second, there has to be a prize or something to win, and then the outcome is determined by skill instead of chance. And it's important that if you get an approval for tier 2, then you get it for all the MCCs. So you don't need to get an approval for each and every MCC as it was with tier 1 before. And currently, you don't need to request additional approval for this tier if you have been processing these MCCs.
Before we move on, I wanted to ask, and I can't remember, I might be interjecting something that you were going to cover shortly, but games of skill and gambling, do you know off the top of your head how those differ? Because here you listed very specific conditions for games of skill.
Yes, so games of skill are not always regulated by the different governments. In some jurisdictions, versus gambling is heavily regulated or even prohibited in some jurisdictions. So and there's the element of chance. So if you are lucky and you're winning something, then that's definitely gambling. It's not based how good are you at a specific game, how skilled are you, how trained are you, and that's the major difference. Of course, some jurisdictions also regulate games of skill. So you might have some places where you need to get a license also from a games of skill merchant, even if that's not gambling per se.
Oh, gotcha. That's helpful. Thank you. And I realized you were going through the tiers, tier 1, tier 2, you covered. So now I'll let you continue with tier 3. Thank you.
Thank you as well. So the last one is the tier 3, and those are prone to deceptive marketing practices or other non-compliance with regulations if there are no appropriate controls. And these are the high-risk financial trading platforms, and as mentioned, also the outbound telemarketing merchants, negative option merchants, and tobacco sales. It's worth to mention that in case of tobacco, only merchants that sell cross-border, so the merchant is located, for example, in UK and it's selling to other European countries, then it has to be registered. If the merchant is selling only to UK customers, then that's only domestic and don't has to be registered. However, it's very hard to control from an acquirer perspective this point because you might have cart holders moving all around Europe, and then you have to get confirmation from the merchant that he's shipping only to his home country, so only to the merchant country. And that's the same topic also with the pharmacies. So in Europe, cross-border pharmacies, so those who are shipping to other countries than their home countries, the merchant countries, those need to be registered and appropriately monitored. In case you get approval for example, tier 2, that license cascades down. So you will also get approval for tier 3, the lowest tier, I would say. And similarly, if you have a tier 1 and you have all the tier 1 MCCs, then you are allowed to acquire and to process transactions also for tier 2 and tier 3. Another important a point to bear in mind that you need to first register the merchant. You need to get approval from Visa. So there might be some questions coming back from Visa. So you should definitely wait until everything is approved and only then process transactions. And this is the same with MasterCard. You first have to get the merchant registered. However, there are usually no questions coming back with Visa. This might be the case for several registrations. And we must discuss shortly also about the non-compliance that has been put in place also previously. There has been a non-compliance fee for unregistered high integrity risk acquiring. And now it has been complemented also with not registered high integrity risk merchants or descriptors. So that fine is pretty heavy. That's $1,000 US per merchant or per descriptor per non-compliance month, and retroactively, of course. This is also something new that you should bear in mind. And also regarding of the content, the illegality, the fines can range from 25,000 US dollars up to 200,000 US dollars. So those are heavy fines, and we should all put efforts to prevent any illegal activity going on.
That is for sure. I'll put a big exclamation point under being careful, not just because it's the right thing to do, but we definitely want all of us collectively to be avoiding these fines. That was an incredible recap, or not recap, explanation of the tiers with a lot of interesting detail. My own quick recap is just making sure that all of us on the call understand. So it's 3 tiers. That tier 1 has the highest level of, it's the most high risk. And I think you said that if you qualify at level 1, then you can run tiers 2 and 3. But within tier 1, the one difference is I think it was 4 or 5 MCC codes in that tier, but you have to actually register each of those separately. Is that correct in tier 1?
Yes, indeed. Every MCC in tier 1 needs a separate approval from Visa.
Okay, but in tier 2 and 3, if you get one of those at the tier 1 accepted, everybody can go ahead and run tier 2 and tier 3. They don't have to do those separately.
Yes, but of course the merchants have to be registered and all the requirements have to be followed.
Yes, exactly. Of course, otherwise, fines. There we go. Okay, this is fantastic. So let's transition to the next topic. Now that we've covered the tiers, we being John Gore here, can you please continue and tell us about the new CSAM rules, or what's changed there?
Yes, so regarding the child sexual abuse materials, there are immediate fines which are levied in case of law enforcement confirmed case, which is up to 200,000 US dollars per instance. And of course, there is an immediate remediation mandate, and you have to confirm within 24 hours all the actions taken. So you have to reply to Visa within 24 hours. What have you done to remediate this situation?
Mm-hmm. Immediate. That's why it's underlined. Okay, it's short bullets for this slide, but extremely important. Thank you. And with this information about CSAM, the fines, this immediate deadline, that's going to close out the section we're doing on VIRP. But sticking with Visa for a moment, we're going to, our next slide, continue with a little bit more on Visa, and I will let Changor continue.
Yes, thanks, Annie. So this is another update which become effective 1st of April, and it's also regarding to MCCs. In this case, all the merchants which are processing digital goods, the fraud program thresholds have been changed. They are lowered compared to standard program, and you have to bear in mind that if you process these merchants to have different rules for monitoring for them, and of course entering the program, it's with the thresholds. Exiting is the same. You have to stay 3 months below the program thresholds, and then you're good. And that's the short update for the Visa Fraud Monitoring Program.
Terrific. Thank you very much for that detail. And apologies, everyone, I have a little frog in my throat. Okay, now we'll turn our attention to MasterCard. And Changor, from your point of view, what should people know about what's been going on with any MasterCard changes?
Yes, there are a couple of changes, and one of those are regarding the MasterCard merchant advice codes, where we see in the last couple of months and years now that there are constantly new values coming to this field. And what's this field actually? When you have a transaction, then you get a response code from the issuer or from the card scheme. Transaction is approved 00, or for example declined for insufficient funds 51, and this information, the MasterCard merchant advice code, this is an extra field to the response code, and it's in data element 48, sub-element 84 if you want to look it up, and those fields are now populated by issuers and by MasterCard. For example, for insufficient funds, MasterCard provides with artificial intelligence a retry strategy that you can leverage or pass it to the merchants, and you also receive some payment cancellations for subscription merchants communicated through this field. And the new values which will be coming effective in November are the 40, which is consumer non-reloadable prepaid card, 41 consumer single-use virtual card numbers. Why is this important? That's important for subscription merchants because this is how they can differentiate if it's a prepaid card which shouldn't be stored for future recurring transactions, or if it's a single-use virtual card, which also shouldn't be stored for future recurring transactions, and therefore avoiding unnecessary friction with the end consumer. And also there are fraud prevention reasons to use it. Of course, this is being provided not just for declined transactions, as the values we can see on the left, but also for approved transactions. So if you want to know more about, then search or ask your acquirer for the MasterCard merchant advice code. And the same you have, or not the same, because it's just for the payment cancellation part, you have with Visa the recurring payment cancellation service, but that's not a different field and not a different value that's provided through Visa Resolve Online. Yes, going on further, we have also new updates regarding the fraud notification service on the next slide. Yes, this is a counter. The fraud notification service is a counter that has been created to help issuers to manage fraud, and it limits the number of fraud chargebacks an issuer can submit for each primary account number or for each token. And this has been increased for fraud-related chargebacks from 15 to 35. And this is now aligned with Visa. So Visa has the same limits for fraud-related chargebacks on a specific PAN or a specific token. And next slide, please. Yes, so with the strong customer authentication being mandated in Europe now for most transactions, fraudsters are trying to lure victims into giving away their one-time passwords, and they do it in a creative way, or we should say social engineering. So there are bank employee impersonations or crypto investment scams, and therefore there are also some new fraud reason codes to classify those. And these have been already implemented the years before for all issuers in the European Economic Area. This has been expanded now globally for all issuers to use. So acquirers, if you are receiving those new codes, be aware of it.
Yeah, that even as I was listening to you talk about this, I was actually thinking about all of us, just our family members, not getting sucked into these. And I know we're here from our business perspective, but on our personal side, how do we protect our families, friends, the world from these kinds of scams? I'm curious if anyone has any interesting examples of this, where they've run into it either through work or personal, and is this would this be a topic to dive into further in the future? Let us know in the chat if it'd be interesting, and of course any other topics you'd be interested in. As I said before, I want to know. That was a great overview, Chongi, of the of MasterCard. Really fantastic. Now we'll turn to that last bit, so we did VIRP, global, and now we're going to focus on Europe. So I'll let you finish up with this section on Europe.
Thank you. So that's just a minor change, we might say, that for the Visa Fraud Monitoring Program and the Visa Disputes Monitoring Program, mid of April, all the assessments related to it will be assessed in US dollars, not in euros as it has been before. And now for the ratio and the calculation, both domestic and international transactions count towards these ratios. Previously, this has been in Europe only for acquirers registered in the United Kingdom or Germany. Now it's global and it's for all acquirers operating in Europe. So be aware of that as well. And this was it in a very short way. If you have questions, as Annie mentioned, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we would be glad to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's actually a perfect segue because our final closing slide actually includes our email addresses. we really do welcome all of you. If you have questions for any of the speakers specifically, feel free to email us. Our email addresses are here. You can see them on the slide. And you can, of course, reach me at the Annie hotline, which is marketing@g2llc.com. So please do reach out. Also, for more information about MCCs in particular, check out our new guide. It's Merchant Category Codes, Risk Demystified, and it is going to talk about the importance of MCC, some of what you heard here, covering that evolution from early days of tax-related identifiers into actually being used now to manage growth and risk. So check out that. If you go to g2llc.com and navigate to resources, in there you'll find the learning library with all our guides, and also there's a separate section for webinars, and this recording will be posted up there soon, and we will within days or within the week. We'll also be sending an email to all participants as a follow-up to this, and so the links that you need will be there as well. So again, put anything you want in the chat here before you leave, or send us an email. But with that, this concludes our session for today. A really huge thank you to our speakers, both Jangor and Jamie, for being here, and to all of you for taking your time. So have a good day and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.